And this is He's Redeeming Love. This is chapter 74, and this is called Meeting Sarah. I was going to street level church for quite a while and was attending services every week on a Friday night. I was encouraged by street level to attend our community centre and start to volunteer around the community centre on a Monday to Friday. I started to volunteer, but my sleep sickness was keeping me in bed all the time, and it was hard to volunteer. But I found by writing articles and staying up at night, I could stay up all night and then go in and volunteer the next day. One day I came in to volunteer in the kitchen, and there was a young girl that I'd met a year before called Sarah that was taking over as manager of the kitchen that prepared about 100 meals for the homeless and the people that visit our centre each day for a lunchtime meal. And Sarah had taken over the position to manage the kitchen and manage the volunteers that work in the kitchen. So I was introduced to her. I was quite impressed. She was about 19 or 20. She was very young. She was a couple of years younger than my son, a couple of years older than my son at the time. And I was always happy to meet a young girl. Seeing I was sexually abused at the age of 14, part of me stayed at that age, and I seemed to be, even though a grown man, an innocent young child in the way I behaved and acted with certain people, had this certain innocence about me. Even though you've seen that I had a life of sin, I've always remained childlike in my faith and always been attracted to younger people because part of my spirit has been stopped at that age of 14, and there was just like an inner child that is part of me. So I'd always been attracted to younger people, and younger females were attractive to me. Sarah was attractive in this state as a younger female. I was always impressed to talk to females, as you can be sure that through reading my testimony so far, I haven't had a good track record of having female friends, and it was interesting to start in the kitchen with a young female who seemed to be a little fiery and a little sure of herself. And after the first day, I had spent quite a day in talking. When you're a lonely individual and you don't get much opportunity to share your life with other people, you find yourself sometimes, when you're given the opportunity to speak, sometimes lonely people can talk a lot, and I had a lot to say and told her a lot about my life. And I went from story to story as we washed up and prepared meals for the 100 people on the first day. I was impressed with seeing her and knowing that she's going to be in there 5 days a week. I went home and stayed up the next night and came in and spent the next day with her and took up where I finished off and told story after story. And I was really impressed. She listened and she asked questions about my stories, and didn't just listen and say yes, 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 as though she wasn't even listening, but she took the time to ask questions about certain things I was saying in the stories for me to illustrate and expand the story further for her to understand. And I found that she had little to say in the very start of our meeting. She seemed to be quiet and a reserved sort of person. I was later to find out, as I got to know Sarah, that she was a very beautiful girl and a very understanding and loving girl, but she was very private, and it took a lot of time for a person to win the confidence of Sarah and win her affection and win her to a state where she would open up of herself and share things about herself with just anyone. She was very personal and private when it came to her own affairs, and so I was doing most of the talking, which I was quite happy to do because I had someone that was listening, and I had someone that couldn't get away from me, not like Newtown Mission where a person could make an excuse and say they need to talk to someone else and go off and talk to someone else. Here I was in the kitchen from 9:30 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon with someone who was essentially locked in the kitchen with me for 6 hours and who had to listen. And listen she did. She took the time to listen to my stories. I have to say that she had tremendous love and grace for me. She was tremendous at understanding me and listening to my story. She could have said, "Shut up, just get to work and don't talk so much," which other people have felt no problem in doing in my past, and so people have been able to shut me down and stop me from talking in the past, but she was not like that. She listened and laughed and understood my stories and asked me questions about the stories and had me speaking more and more. And I found that I've really come to enjoy volunteering at street level. The sleep sickness was causing me untold grief, but I found that if I stayed up 2 nights during the week, that I could come in 3 days. And if I stayed up 3 nights, I could come in. If I stayed up 2 nights, I could come in the 2 days after those nights. And if I stayed up 3 nights, I could come in for 3 days. So I was working 2 to 3 days a week volunteering. Sarah never gave me up to her mother. Her mother was Robin Moulds, Robin with a double B-I-N, Moulds. And she was the pastor of our church and a very loving person. And together with her husband Paul, they led the street level church that I was a part of, and they were a very loving couple. And Sarah never gave them information that the only way I was coming in 2 and 3 days a week was staying up without sleep. They never clued into the fact that I was manic and in a state of mania every time I was volunteering, and it took these times up out of bed that to get me to come in because of the state of my sleep sickness, that I just couldn't get out of bed until 3 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon if I left it to the sleep sickness. So I used to maybe come in on a Tuesday, stay up on a Monday night, come in on a Tuesday, stay up on a Tuesday night and come in on a Wednesday, and then have a day in bed and perhaps stay up Thursday night and come in on Friday. So I was getting 2 to 3 days worth of work done and meeting Sarah 2 to 3 days a week and seeing her at church, and it was all fantastic and it's an exciting thing to do. Sarah was what she wouldn't consider herself tremendously attractive, but she was attractive and she is attractive. It's just that we all seem to have lower opinions of ourselves and than other people would have of us. And I've always found her to be smart and intelligent and a person who has a strong mind and is strong-willed. And she's certainly a person that could be a tremendous support to any man, and not only be a support to a man, but lead a family and be strong enough to lead in business or lead in a ministry, and have a husband that was equally as with equal abilities to lead or equal abilities to co-manage a ministry or even work to support her herself. She's very strong and very capable, and she was a very fun person to work with in the kitchen. So I started to get to know Sarah. She just listened and listened and listened to me. Never in my life had I ever met a person who I'd listened to for so long, who had listened to me for so long. Never in my life had I met anyone I could talk to so much and have them listen. That was a normal person. I know my friend Yanni used to listen to me all night, talking all night. We'd stay up all night talking, and he'd talk and I'd talk, and we'd both talk to each other all night, and we'd listen. But besides Yanni, I had found no one who would listen